Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Sports Mole's Football Shorts. I'm Barney Corkhill. I'm here with our football editor Matt Law, and we're here to talk about our predictions for game week 14, the final round of fixtures before Christmas, Matt. And I regret to inform you all before Christmas, there's been a travesty gone on, and Matt's gone 18 points clear somehow. I don't know where that's come from, but a good round for you. Two exact results last time out.
Yeah, you're going to need a big one. I find you this week, you don't want to be going into the new year, do you? Quite a lot behind. But yeah, I think it was Arsenal, Southampton, wasn't it? And West Ham Palace, I got spot on. So yeah, nice little cushion now.
Yeah, I'm in a bit of a bad run at the moment, but I'll turn it round this week. I'm guaranteed about it, especially as the first game is Crystal Palace versus Liverpool. And you keep saying I never back against Liverpool. I ain't going to back against them here either, because why would I? I mean, they're favourites going into this into every game this season. Top of the league again after that Tottenham win. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I've unfortunately gone Liverpool as well here. I've gone 2-1 Liverpool. The Tottenham game was remarkable, really, wasn't it? I thought Tottenham played a lot of criticism of Mourinho's tactics, but it worked to a certain degree, and they had some big chances, didn't they, in the second half of that game? And on another day, Tottenham maybe win that game. It looked like it was going to be a draw, but late winner from Firmino, and it's a massive result for Liverpool. Not just, we said the title's not going to be won or lost in that game, but they're 3 points clear at the top now, and it's a nice little cushion because it's been so congested up there. If they pick up another big result here, obviously Tottenham have got a tough game against Leicester, and Southampton, played Manchester City as well, so they could potentially open up a nice little advantage going into Christmas, which would be good. I do expect them to win this game. Palace, I think, last 3 games, I've been quite impressed by them. Obviously, won heavily at West Brom, and then draw against Tottenham and a draw at West Ham, which was one of the ones I picked as well. I just thought they're becoming a difficult side to beat, Palace. I think Benteke's been playing quite well. Obviously, he'll be suspended for this game because he was sent off. So it remains to be seen whether, Ayew will come in, or Batshuayi, who's not really done too much of them this season. But yeah, Palace, they showed against Tottenham, didn't they, in their last home game? They're going to be very difficult to beat. And they're going to take points off of the big teams this season, I'm sure of it. But Liverpool, the injury situation is easing a touch. Matip perhaps might be back for this game, and I could be wrong. Could be back for this game, which would be big for them. And yeah, tight game. I'm expecting Palace to cause them some problems. I do fancy them to score, but I've gone Liverpool 2-1.
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same. I think Matip should be back. He was back in full training on Thursday, and Thiago was also back on the grass. It'll be a bit of time before he gets back, but can't wait for him to get back. So it is easing a bit, but still missing a lot of players. So to get that win over Tottenham without a recognised senior fit centre back, I think the strength and depth of the Liverpool squad is really coming through at the moment. The big question mark over this game for them is their away form. They haven't won away from home in the league for it'll be one day under 3 months, I think, when this game kicks off. So that's a long winless run away from home. And we've talked about particularly Manchester United, the disparity between their home and away form, and how their away form is so much better than their home form. The disparity between Liverpool's home form and away form is actually the biggest in the league. They've a perfect record at home, 7 wins from 7, but away from home they've only won once all season. So that's growing into a concern for Jurgen Klopp. Probably they need to get the victory on the board now. They've drawn the last 4 after that hammering they took at the hands of Aston Villa. And as you said, Crystal Palace is not an easy place to go, as they showed against Tottenham in their last home game, 1-1 draw. They'll fancy their chance of getting a similar result, given that result and Liverpool's recent results away from home. But like you, I can just see Liverpool getting the job done. I think that win over Tottenham and the manner in which it happened will be huge for them. It would be interesting to see Klopp's selection, because obviously last time there was a Wednesday night to Saturday lunchtime turnaround. There was a big thing about it from Klopp. Crystal Palace obviously in the same boat this time around, and Liverpool do have 8 games until their next game after this. But it will be interesting to see if they make changes for this one, particularly as he didn't make any subs at all against Tottenham. So it'll be interesting to see if he makes changes for this. But yeah, like you, I'm backing Liverpool to win this one 2-1. Also on Saturday is Southampton versus Man City. Southampton, as we say, flying high, 3rd place now in the table after that draw against Arsenal. And it's a sign of their progress that they've probably come away from that game against Arsenal disappointed to only come away with a draw away to Arsenal. Man City certainly disappointed to come away with a draw at home to West Brom. Quite how they didn't win that. Sam Johnson getting in the way of so many, but Man City really should have. They had the chances to win that by a couple of goals. They'll be hugely disappointed by that West Brom result, and they'll be keen to bounce back. Do you see them doing it against Southampton?
No, I don't actually. I've got a draw here. I think obviously City sitting down in 9th at the moment, and I keep saying this. You can't look at the league table, but it is 12, 13 games in now. Obviously 11 games for Villa, but they're just not really, I mean, the West Brom game, like you say, on another day they win that game, but they would have won that game if the season's gone by. They're just not, haven't really got the cutting edge in the final third at the moment. I do think it's more than a slight little blip. I think it's a bit of a concern this season for Guardiola. Obviously, moving forward, they obviously need a new centre forward next summer. They'd obviously like Haaland, I think, but obviously his release clause is not until the summer after, so it's going to be very difficult to get him next summer. But Southampton, I think you're right. They went 1-0 up against Arsenal, and it was almost too comfortable for them at that stage. They didn't really need to push on, and they'll be disappointed, like you say, to only come away with a point. Aubameyang, obviously a nice little finish, but especially after Arsenal went down to 10 men. And Southampton were disappointing, I'd say, in the second half of that game. They were pushing late on, and seen them have a couple of disappointing games. I think they were disappointing against United earlier this season, but I mean, their home form in terms of goals, I think it's 7 Premier League games in a row they've scored at least twice on their own patch. So they're coming into this game. I've actually back to 2-2 here. I mean, I found it to be open. I think City will cause them problems purely because Southampton, as good as they've been this season, they've got two static centre-backs, two good centre-backs, excellent in the air, but not a lot of pace. And I think City could hurt them going the other end. But similarly, I think Southampton could really hurt City's back four in this game. So yeah, I'm predicting an entertaining game, to be honest. And I just can't back Southampton to lose at home. And City's form this season has not been great, like I said. So yeah, 2-2.
Yeah, only Liverpool have picked up more home points this season than Southampton, which is completely different from last season. I think Southampton last season had the second worst home form in the entire league. So huge improvement there for them, which is probably the main driving force behind their league position at the moment. Yeah. But I agree with you. I'm backing a draw here. I've gone for 1-1 instead of 2-2. But yeah, it is hard to back against Southampton at the moment, particularly at home, even when playing these big boys. And as you say, Man City in seasons gone by, it just every single game it looked impossible for them to lose, certainly, and even drop points at times. In that 100-point season, then 98-point season, I think it was, looked just like they'd never dropped points. But this season, as you say, they've only won 5 of their 12 games. They've drawn 5, they've lost 2. They might not be losing games, but they're dropping points. And in previous seasons, the standard Liverpool and Man City have been setting, a draw was almost as bad as a defeat, any drop point. So they've certainly benefited from the fact that the league is a lot more congested this season, and there are more drop points over the course of the season so far from those big teams. But certainly they do need to get back to winning ways soon if they're to get themselves in the title races. 8 points now, the gap to the top of the table, Liverpool. They've got a game in hand, but still that's a big gap if Liverpool start to show the sort of consistency that they have been in recent seasons. So yeah, obviously there's still a long way to go this season, but they do need to start picking up points and victories. What I would say is their defensive record's been very good recently. Obviously West Brom scored against them, but before that they'd kept quite a few clean sheets in a row. But yeah, I'm also backing a draw here, which again, I think, as we said ahead of the Arsenal game for Southampton, is a sign of how far they've come, that we're backing a draw here. We wouldn't be surprised to see them probably go and win this game. They've done really well this season. So yeah, both backing draws in that one. We mentioned Arsenal there. They're in action against Everton. They'd be delighted to end that losing run at home, Arsenal, but still drop points. Still, I think, what is it now, six Premier League games without a win. Still down in 15th place. The pressure is certainly still on Mikel Arteta going back to his former club here. Everton, on the other hand, looked, obviously started the season really well, then looked in free fall, and now have strung together back-to-back wins over Chelsea and Leicester, which are huge results for them. Really impressive, and lifted them back up to 5th place. So, like with Southampton in the last game, I'd say Everton probably come into this match against Arsenal as favourites on current form. Obviously, we've seen that Everton can slip up, and they are prone to that slip up, but those victories against Chelsea and Leicester will give them huge confidence, because this looked like such a tough run for them leading up to Christmas. Chelsea, Leicester, Arsenal, Manchester United, to have got 6 points from them, those 4 games, even before they got into that run, they probably have taken that. So to have got 6 points from the first 2, they'll be delighted with. But I can see them carrying on this winning run here. I think Arsenal, Aubameyang, I think that goal is big for him. I think it will help him get over that drought he was on, and Arsenal should improve going forward now. So I'm backing them to get on the score sheet, but I do fancy Everton to win this one. As I say, I think they go into it as favourites. Arsenal, it's just very hard to back them at the moment. 7 defeats from their 13 games, 7 defeats from their last 11. So yeah, I've gone for Everton 2-1 here.
2-1. Yeah, I've gone Everton 1-0 here. I think it'll be a really tight game. Arsenal, like I say, their Aubameyang's goal, obviously you'd like to think that would, from Arsenal point of view, that would, spark a little run for him. That's obviously what Arteta's hoping. But like you say, it's still been a poor season for Arsenal. The next 3 games, they play City in the League Cup and then Chelsea after. So, it's a huge period, isn't it, I still think it papered over the cracks a touch, the Southampton game. I don't really think Southampton were great at all in the second half. I think Arsenal managed to claw their way back in and slightly fortunate. Obviously, they almost won it late on Arsenal. Now I think Rob Holding header off the woodwork, which would have been, excellent for them. But yeah, it's a tough game for Everton. I think Everton, I mean, there's a lot of ways that Everton can hurt you now. I think Richarlison's, playing well at the moment. Obviously, Calvert-Lewin's had a great season. I think Alex Iwobi as well, obviously playing against his former club. I think when he first went there to Everton, he wasn't great at all, if we're honest. He had a lot of poor games, wasn't really in the side. But recently, he's just showed, quite a few nice performances. Like you say, Everton's recent form, to beat Chelsea and Leicester, back-to-back games and not concede a goal is huge. And if they can get into a little bit of a groove, early on this season, they were playing excellently. Like you say, went on a poor run. And I think, like you say, they are prone to the poor result. I mean, they lost at home to Leeds, didn't they? Not that long ago, end of November, I think it was. But tough game. Everton play Manchester United in the League Cup as well, 23rd of December. So it's a tough little period for Leeds. Like you say, Everton come through that. But yeah, I just can't. I mean, this game almost want to draw. It was a similar situation in the Southampton game. I just fancied Arsenal get a point there because it had to end at some point. But I just can't see them getting a point at Everton at the moment, as well as Everton are playing. And Arsenal, I still think there's a lot of issues for them to iron out. So yeah, Everton 1-0.
Both going for Everton wins there then. The final game on Saturday is Newcastle versus Fulham. You mentioned Everton might be prone to the odd poor result. Newcastle certainly are as well. 5-2 against Leeds. It was a bit of a topsy-turvy game until a bit late on when Leeds pulled away, but still 5-2 defeat is a heavy one away to Leeds. Fulham, 0-0 draw against Brighton last time out. Doesn't do much for their league position. They're still in the relegation zone. But, back-to-back draws. One defeat in the last 4 is an improvement. Certainly defensively, they seem to have improved. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I've gone a draw here. I've gone goalless actually, which might be a little bit strange since our Newcastle conceded 5 goals. I think Steve Bruce, said it was a little bit like watching Sunday League defending at times, and it was as well as Leeds played, and I think they were really good, but some of the defending from Newcastle was not good at all. And, defensively, I thought they'd been okay this season before that game. Obviously, their goal difference looks a lot worse now after conceding 5 in one game. And Fulham, like you mentioned, I do quite like Fulham at the moment. I think they're playing quite well. Back-to-back draws, as you mentioned. Obviously, lost to City, but beat Leicester. And, I mean, they've given themselves, I probably expect them to be really not rock bottom because Sheffield United are there, but maybe sitting 19th or maybe only 4 points or so at this stage. And obviously got 9. There's a little bit of a gap. I mean, Arsenal in 15th, just looking at the league table now. Obviously, Brighton and Burnley in and around Fulham. If Fulham could pick up a win here, they'd really, really fire themselves in touch and above those teams just above them. So it's a tight game. I've just sat on the fence a touch here, though. Newcastle, not entirely convinced by them, in terms of consistency, but Fulham have been okay recently. So another goalless draw here.
Yeah, I think Fulham, obviously going away from home, they'll take big confidence from that recent victory at Leicester. But I think these sorts of games are less suited to them, really, where they might need to. They won't have, quite as much. The opposition won't have quite as much of the ball, and Fulham need to create their own stuff rather than the other team playing open, expansive football, which Newcastle don't always do. So I think this will be a tough one for them. I've gone for a Newcastle 1-0 win in this one. Like you, I think it's going to be a tight game. I did almost go 2-0 Newcastle. I think they've just got the firepower to put them past Fulham, and they have been certainly very patchy this season, but they've also picked up some decent victories, and if they win here, they could go level on points with Man City and Wolves. So when you say it like that, it's certainly not been a bad season for them so far. The consistency is what is lacking, and certainly it wouldn't now be a surprise to go and see them lose at home to Fulham, which is probably what Steve Bruce needs to stamp out more than anything. He needs to go into these matches as favourites and not be prone to that odd slip-up in games which they'd be expected to win, which they are here. But saying that, I am backing them to win this one 1-0. Moving on to Sunday, there's Brighton versus Sheffield United. Sheffield United created that unwanted piece of history against Manchester United. Such a good start for them, and they ran them close in the end, eventually losing 3-2. But 1 point from 13 games is the worst in the history of the English top flight, which goes back well over 100 years. Can't really dress it up any other way. It's been a horrendous start to their season, and it's hard to see them recovering from it, to be honest. Whether they deserve more points than they've got, is arguable, but it's a moot point in the end, really, because, they're in such dreadful form. They're only heading one way at the moment, and that's for relegation. They'll be viewing matches like this one against Brighton as chances to get points, certainly more than perhaps at home against Manchester United. They'll be viewing games against Brighton, who are, down there towards the bottom of the table as well. Obviously 10 points clear of Sheffield United, which is quite the gap, but still down there towards the bottom of the table and winless in their last 4 games. So they'll be viewing this as a good opportunity to maybe get at least one more point on the board. But personally, I can't see it happening. I find it impossible to back Sheffield United at the moment. I'm sure they will get more points on the board sooner rather than later. And it's a sort of the element like we talked about with Arsenal and even with Manchester United's home form, or this run can't really go on forever. They've got to snap out of it sometime and improve, because it's hard to see them even going as badly as Derby County did. I remember how bad they were when they did the lowest ever points tally in the Premier League. I'd still be surprised if they broke that unwanted record, but at the moment it is just hard to back against them, and they just need that win to give them confidence. Then they start going on a run. But for me, I'm backing Brighton here. As I've said a few times on this podcast, I quite like Brighton and the way they play here, so I've gone for a 2-1 Brighton win.
2-1, yeah, we've gone quite different this week. I've gone 1-1 here in the end. I think I saw enough from Sheffield United in the Manchester United game to think that they can get a point here. In the early stages of that game, losing Sander Berge was obviously not ideal. He picked up that injury, and he's obviously one of their better players. And to lose him at that stage, obviously brought on Jagielka, who then got subbed himself. It was at Basham into midfield. There was not a lot of creativity. I thought Ampadu, was good for Sheffield United in that game, and obviously Burke up front caused some problems with his pace. McGoldrick's a good player. They've got a lot of good players in the team. Come up with a brace in that game. But I thought United, it was probably a comfortable 3-2 in the sense that it was a very kind scoreline to Sheffield United, and in the end, because they scored so late. United really should have made it 4-1 at a stage. They had a couple of good chances to really put the game to bed. But anyway, you dress it up. What's it now? 9 points from 17th place Burnley, and Burnley played a game fewer. So when you put it like that, if Burnley were to win that game in hand, it's tough for Sheffield United. Seeing as how you say it's only 9 points, but when you've got 1 point from 13 games already, you're starting to struggle a bit. But I do think Sheffield United will pick up a win sooner or later. That they have to. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it came in this game, to be completely honest. I think they're good enough to pick up a win here. But let's say Brighton play some good stuff as well, and Brighton, they're only won twice this season as well as they've played. They've had some really standout performances, but they do have a tendency to play well and get beat, which for me is a little bit worrying, because when you start playing poorly, you perhaps will lose again. But yeah, it's a really big game at the bottom of the table, and 1-1 here.
1-1 for Matt. There's a couple of huge games on Sunday afternoon, starting with Tottenham versus Leicester. It's second versus fourth. Tottenham will obviously be desperate to bounce back from that late Liverpool defeat. Leicester, similarly, will be desperate to bounce back from that defeat against Everton, which is really disappointing at home. I think that was their fourth home defeat of the season in the league, which is really disappointing for such a high-flying team, and their fifth defeat of the season in total, which you mentioned last week. It's a surprising total for someone sitting so high up in fourth place. This is obviously towards the top of the table, and another game which will really test Tottenham's title credentials. How do you see it going?
Yeah, it's strange when you think all about that, isn't it? That 5 defeats this season. Obviously, they've won 8, which is the most joint with Liverpool in the league. But to lose 5 times, that's probably a little bit concerning, because if going on the season, is that going to be enough? If they keep picking up wins and lose the odd one, they're obviously going to get in and around the top 4. But I think I do have a tendency to have results like this, don't they? Where I think you can trust them to a certain degree, but in certain games, you're not entirely sure what you're going to get. I'm not massively sure what kind of Leicester are going to turn up to this game. Tottenham, on the other hand, you fancy they'll be really determined to bounce back. I thought they were unfortunate. As well as you say, it's quite anti-football. So it was Mourinho. It was always going to be a game where Tottenham sat in and wanted to, absorb the pressure, and it worked perfectly to get back to 1-1. Fantastic finish, wasn't it, from Son? Very tight to be an offside, but had some really big chances in the second half. And on another day, I think Tottenham could have won that game. Liverpool, in fairness, did have loads and loads of the ball. They were the side pushing, and obviously it paid dividends at the end and got the win. But yeah, Tottenham, I just think it's a really dangerous game for Tottenham at this stage of the season, because as well as they've played this season, they've obviously got a couple of tough games. They play Wolves away next, and they've got a trip to Stoke in the Cup as well. So it's a couple of, if they were to get a poor result here, obviously you'll rest players against Stoke, but then to go to Wolves, who are, as we know, very, very capable of, beat Chelsea, didn't they? Very, very capable of picking up big results. And I've actually gone 1-1 here. If I had to pick a winner, I'd probably go Tottenham. But Leicester, you've got to respect this season. They haven't drawn this season, but I'm fancying to pick up their first draw of the season here, 1-1.
Yeah, we've gone different again. This could be the week of comeback, Matt. Yeah. I've gone 2-1 Tottenham in this one, but I did go back and forth, to be honest, because as you mentioned, which Leicester's going to turn up? There was the Leicester that was disappointing against Liverpool, lost 3-0. in probably what will be a fairly similar game to this one in terms of Liverpool were at the top of the table and Tottenham are towards the top of the table as well now. But you look at their away form in general, and it's actually really good this season. Only United have picked up more away points, 5 wins, and just that 1 defeat from their 6 away games so far this season. And they've, battered Man City away from home. They've beaten Leeds comfortably. They've beaten Arsenal, so they've got some decent scalps on the road as well. So I certainly wouldn't be too surprised to see them go and win this match. But I think Tottenham have got more about them this season, and to win these sorts of games. Obviously, the narrow defeat against Liverpool showed that they've perhaps got a little bit more to do to go and really push. Well, I think they probably will be up there pushing for the title, but in those big games, what could be later, if that was later in the season, we'd be describing that as maybe a title decider or a title 6-pointer. To go and win those games at Anfield, they've maybe got that little bit extra to do. Certainly Mourinho's style lends itself to a certain, tactic in that game, whereas that wouldn't work in this, home game against Leicester, where both teams like to hit on the counter-attack when they can. So it'll be an intriguing game in terms of from a tactical standpoint. But yeah, I was close to going for a draw. I wouldn't be too surprised to see Leicester. It's a really open game. I'm really looking forward to this one. But in the end, I've just gone for Tottenham 2-1 when I think they've just got enough about them this season. And their home form is really good as well. We shouldn't get away from that fact. They've been good on the home, particularly recently. So yeah, I've just gone for a Tottenham win there. Probably the standout fixture, though, is Manchester United versus Leeds, finally renewing hostilities in the league. It's been a long time. Big rivalry. Obviously, you're a United fan. Talk to us about this game.
Yeah, it's a huge game, isn't it? One that, you always just look forward to when Leeds were in the Premier League. Obviously, it's been a long time. I think it's the first Premier League meeting since 2004, February 2004. And again, as I like to do, I was looking at the team sheet for that game, and, Paul Scholes was on the score sheet for United and Alan Smith for Leeds. It was United had the likes of Cleverson in their team at that stage. Leeds had a really strong lineup: Milner, Pennant, Smith, Seth Johnson, Matteo at the back, Carson in goal. And it was just such a great fixture, wasn't it? Such a fierce rivalry. I mean, the rivalry with Liverpool is obviously the one, but Liverpool, Leeds, City, these sort of games, it's been a long time since they met. I think, Leeds have not won at Old Trafford in the league. I think 1981 was the last time they picked up all 3 points away to United in the league. So it's obviously it's been a tough, hunting ground for them when they were at this level. And it's just going to be such a good game. United holding on to, but not holding on, but you know what I mean, to beat Sheffield United and leave themselves up in 6th and 5 points off the top with a game in hand. And you have to say, 7-2-3 is their record this season: 7 wins, 2 draws, 3 defeats, and it's a good record at this stage. If they could sort their home form out, then I don't expect them to challenge for the title, but I do expect them to be in and around the top 4. And if they can sort their home form out, but Leeds, great end, probably the best side to watch this season. If you're going to watch a game, you want to watch Leeds play, because they're full of it, aren't they? They're full of goals. Obviously 5-2 against Newcastle last time out, and their movement, the way they play, it's going to be high energy. It's going to be a really tough game for Manchester United. Obviously team selection will be interesting. You fancy, Fred had come back into the side, and McTominay and Cavani might be fit. Luke Shaw perhaps might come back in. It'll be a little bit of rotation, but Rashford was excellent against Sheffield United. So was Martial. Big game for him. And Greenwood played his role in that excellent counter-attacking game. So Solskjaer's got a lot of options up there all over the parks, looking quite healthy. I thought Pogba was good again, and been a good response from him since all the saga and will he leave, won't he leave, etc. So huge game, but a tight game. But I've just gone United here. I think they'll edge it 2-1. Manchester United, sorry.
2-1. Yeah, I've gone 1-1 here. I couldn't really separate them. The main point being United's home form, which is hard to ignore. It's not just 5 points from 6 games. Only 3 teams have picked up fewer points at home than United. It's their 3 goals from 6 home games, which is just completely not what you expect from United as well. And obviously one of those goals was enough to get them the win against West Brom. But aside from that, the goals come in the 6-1 defeat at Tottenham and 3-1 defeat against Crystal Palace. So, yeah, 1 goal from the last 4 that is at home, which is so poor for a team who've been, scoring goals for fun away from home. I mentioned it with Liverpool, but particularly with Manchester United, it's bizarre. Not only that they keep winning away from home, but they keep going behind and then coming back to win away from home. And as you say, if they can start putting that into their home form, there's certainly growing talk of whether they're capable of mounting a title challenge this season. If teams continue to show the inconsistency they have this season, then there's no reason why they can't be up in around there. If if Liverpool keep dropping points away from home like United are at home, then it's similar sort of records, won't it? It'll come down to home form versus away form of those 2 teams. But yeah, whether they've got that consistency over the course of the whole season, I do expect their home form to improve. It has to, sooner rather than later. But I also expect their away form to dip, because that has to. I mean, 10 away wins in a row is something only 4 teams have ever done in top flight history. So it's a remarkable record, and it can't go on for too much longer, I think. Leeds are just a very difficult team to call at the moment, aren't they? They're so, you don't know what you're going to get. Well, you do sort of know what you're going to get from them, but you don't know what result you're going to get from them. And the 5-2 victory over Newcastle, obviously, big boost to them. But, 5 wins, 6 defeats from their 13 games so far this season, 22 goals scored, 24 against. As you say, they're some of the league's entertainers at the moment, but there's such a difficult team to predict. I think going into this one, there's not one fixture Leeds fans will want to win more than this one in the entire season away to Manchester United. You mentioned their record; it's been so long. They will relish this chance. And as soon as they got promotion, as soon as the fixture list came out, this was probably the game. This and the reverse fixture at Ellen Road that they circled and thought, we really fancy this one. This is the one we want to win more than any other. So they'll certainly be fired up for this one. But yeah, it's a difficult one. Again, it's one of those like the Tottenham Leicester. I wouldn't be surprised to see it go either way, because United's home form has been so poor. It wouldn't be too much of a surprise to see Leeds go and win this one. But yeah, I've sat on the fence a bit here and gone for a 1-1 draw with this one, but I'm really looking forward to that game. Rounding off Sunday's action is the West Midlands derby between West Brom and Aston Villa. West Brom obviously got that really good point at Man City last time out, but then Slaven Bilic sacked the next day. Sam Allardyce in. This is his first game in charge. Aston Villa got 0-0 against Burnley last time out. How they didn't win that, I'm not too sure. They had plenty of chances and plenty of shots in that game, but couldn't find the breakthrough. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I can't believe they didn't win that game, Villa, to be honest. Like I say, it was just incredible, wasn't it? So many opportunities, so many clear-cut chances, so many shots, but just wouldn't happen for them. And that would have been a really disappointing result for them, because they moved up the table even more. I mean, they've still got 2 games in hand over a lot of sides this season, sitting 11th, at the moment. And it's been an excellent start for Villa. I think they're a really good side. Obviously, Jack Grealish has been fantastic again. A lot of players playing well. McGinn's been good again recently. And I mean, it's a huge game to come into for Sam Allardyce, isn't it? The first. I mean, the decision to sack, Bilic was obviously, it wasn't about the City result, because, you can't sack a manager based on that, because they managed to get a point when no one expected them to. Obviously, they feel that Sam Allardyce is the man to keep them in the league. Sam Allardyce has already been speaking about, the January window being incredibly important. He's already identified some key positions that he'd like to strengthen, and whether that works out and whether he does keep him in the league, obviously we'll find out, in a few months' time, whether that was the right decision. But, harsh on Bilic, I thought. I mean, they're only 3 points from safety at this stage, and they are capable. I've seen them play quite well this season, West Brom. Obviously, they beat Sheffield United. Obviously, the Palace game, I think, would have been a one where the owners thought, losing 5-1 at home to Palace was not good. So they were unfortunate with Newcastle and picked up an excellent point against City. So I don't think they're down by any means this season. Their record's a little bit worrying. Obviously, only Sheffield United have won fewer games this season, which is a little bit concerning. And I do fancy Villa here. I think on the road they're really good. They're more suited to playing away from home, but West Brom will be difficult to beat. But I've gone Villa here 2-0.
Yeah, I've actually gone exactly the same. I did go back and forth on this one just because the new manager bounce, which clubs often get. And I think that's the thing, that 5-1 defeat in their last home game against Crystal Palace, you're probably not going to see that happen to a Sam Allardyce team, are you? So that's probably their reasoning behind it. And they maybe think that scraping jaws in those sorts of games and in more games than they have been doing so far, might be enough just about to keep them in the division, which Allardyce is probably better at doing than Bilic. But like you, I think it was very harsh to sack him, particularly, I know the deals were probably already done before that Man City game, but you'd have hoped that Man City result would have given him a bit of extra time. But that's not how it turned out. But yeah, it's a difficult one, because I wouldn't be surprised to see Allardyce go and grind out a draw in this first game, make things tighter at the back. But Aston Villa, a little bit like Leeds, actually, a very difficult one to predict this season in terms of results, because they can pick up the odd good result. Recent away results include that win over Arsenal, win over Wolves, win at Leicester. Their away form's actually been really good this season. 5th best away record in the league, 4 wins and just 1 defeat from 5 games. So away from home, they've been really good so far this season. And crucially, they've kept clean sheets in all those. They've got the best away record defensive record away from home in the league so far this season. So they don't concede many goals on their travels. Obviously, West Brom don't score too many goals, so I can see them drawing a blank here. The question for me is at the other end whether Sam Allardyce can keep Aston Villa out. Obviously, Burnley did that, and Villa will probably face a similar-ish test to what Burnley put up. But as we said, Villa really should have scored that, and I can't really see them failing to make a breakthrough for a second game in a row if it's a similar game. So yeah, like you, I've gone for 2-0 to Aston Villa in that one. As a double header on Monday night, Burnley versus Wolves. We just mentioned Burnley, the 0-0 draw against Aston Villa last time out. Wolves, a really good victory over Chelsea. I'm going to repeat myself for a third game in a row here, but Wolves are another one of those teams that are just very hard to predict at the moment. You don't know what result they're going to get. How do you see this one going?
Yes, it was a tough one to call. I went sort of, I wouldn't say back on full foot. I do fancy Wolves here, and I've backed Wolves to win. I almost went a draw in the end, but just gone 2-1 Wolves. I think the win over Chelsea was a big one because I think there've been some question marks this season over Wolves. Not perhaps been fantastic in games when they should have been, but they are, as we know, capable. I think the issue of the centre forward is going to be a problem. Obviously, Jimenez is out. It does look like they want to sign a striker in January. There's been talk of Origi, isn't there, from Liverpool? Maybe he might come into the club. I do think they're short, for as long as Jimenez is going to be on the sidelines because he's such a huge player for them, in terms of presence and the way they play. And as good as I think the other players are going forward, Neto, I think Podence is fantastic. They've got some excellent players up front. Adam Traore obviously needs, as we've said for the past couple of seasons, needs to show more consistency, but he's capable of causing a lot of problems. But Burnley on a nice little run at the moment, aren't they? To be honest, obviously lost heavily at City, but point against Everton, beat Arsenal, and point at Villa, which is a really good return from 3 tough games. So obviously they're still sitting down in 17th place at this stage. So it's a big game for both sides because Wolves, sitting 10th at the moment. If Wolves put a couple of back-to-back wins together, they'll fly up the table. Burnley play Leeds away in their next game, and they play Sheffield United in their final game of the year at home. So Burnley got some really big games coming up, teams around them that they will expect to pick points up. But yeah, like I say, I almost want to draw here in the end, but just Wolves 2-1.
Yeah, I've also gone Wolves by 1 goal. I've gone 1-0. I think Burnley's just lack of attacking threat, the lowest scorers in the league, puts me to see them drawing another blank in this game. But as you say, there's certainly been an improvement from Burnley, and they deserve credit for that. I think they lost 5 of their first 6 games and have since lost only 1 of their last 6. So there's certainly been an improvement. Obviously, dragged themselves out of the relegation zone with that, closer to Brighton. And I think they'll now be, whereas towards the start of the season when they picked up 1 point from the first 6 games, there would have been thoughts, all right, this could be our year to go down. They'll now be getting back into the mentality of we're going to pick up enough points to stay up in this division, which has been the case. Obviously, they've had fluctuating seasons. The last few seasons they've been in the league where they've done really well, pushing for top half or been sort of battling against a drop. This looks like another battling against a drop season, but I do expect them to pick up enough points over the course of the season to stay up, just because they can get those draws against Aston Villa, draw against Everton recently. The win against Arsenal was obviously a lot more unexpected given their record there, but Arsenal obviously in poor form going into that game. But they can pick up those odd results, which should be enough to keep them in the division. And to be honest, this game would probably fall into the category of that in terms of you wouldn't be surprised to go and see Burnley grind out a draw against Wolves. But yeah, I think Wolves coming off the back of that 2-1 win against Chelsea, I think that was big for them. Obviously, last time they picked up a win was against Arsenal, and then they went and were really disappointing against Liverpool the very next game. So I think Nuno will be drilling it into his side. They need that sort of consistency. They need to follow up those wins because those big wins don't mean anything if you don't really follow it up. And obviously, Burnley away is a much easier task on paper than Liverpool away, so they'll be more confident of following that up. But these are the sorts of games you can see Burnley getting points from. These are also the sorts of games Wolves need to start winning if they are to push for those European places, because that certainly will be their target this season. Having finished 7th, I think it is the last 2 seasons, they would be wanting to push up for that Europa League, that return to Europa League top 6, and in this season, maybe even top 4. But to do that, they really need to start getting more consistency. They need to start scoring more goals as well. We mentioned Burnley's attacking record. Wolves is only 13 goals from 13 games so far this season, which for a team with European aspirations is not really good enough. So they need to improve on that front as well. I don't see this one being a high-scoring affair considering that. But yeah, I've just gone for Wolves 1-0 win here. I can see it being a tight one, but both going for Wolves victories there. Rounding off the game week is Chelsea versus West Ham. It's a London derby. Chelsea coming into it off the back of back-to-back defeats. I think it's the first time in about a year since that's happened. And it's really come since the title talk really started ramping up, hasn't it? We was always all talking about whether they had the ability and consistency to really push for the title, and they were starting to look like the real deal because they were on a really good run of form in all competitions, not just in the Premier League. But those defeats to Everton and Wolves, really disappointing, really dented their title challenge. As we've said many times, it's a congested table, so they're certainly not out of things yet. But those two defeats have sent them down to 7th place. Now 6 points off leaders Liverpool, so it's a huge dent to their title aspirations, and one that might be hard to recover from, because those are the sorts of runs, and particularly if they drop points here, and then they've got Arsenal next in the London derby. Obviously, as we've mentioned many times, Arsenal not in the best form, but they're still a difficult team full of quality, and with London derbies it's always a bit harder. Obviously this one's a London derby as well, so if they suddenly start going on a 4-5 game winless run, then they could be out of sight, and suddenly that title challenge, which started to look quite convincing not too long ago, could just be up in smoke straight away. And West Ham are certainly not an easy team to face. There's only 1 point in one place separating these two teams in the table. The 1-1 draw against Crystal Palace, I think they'll be relatively disappointed at both the result and the performance in that one. But in general, recently they've been in really good form. 1 defeat in their last 6. Looking back now, I think it's only 2 defeats in their last 10 games, and those have been against Liverpool and Manchester United. So certainly no shame in losing those ones. So it's a really interesting game, this one. I can see it being very close, and it certainly won't be easy for Chelsea. I think the fact that Chelsea at home just about gives them the edge for me. But it's another one of those. There's quite a few of them this week, which is quite difficult to call, and you wouldn't be too surprised to see West Ham go and get something from Stamford Bridge. But for me, I've just gone for a 2-1 Chelsea win in this one.
Yeah, I thought you would. I've gone the same here, 2-1. It's just, I think it's going to be a tight game. I think Chelsea, you mentioned Chelsea's play Arsenal next. They actually play Villa at home after that, which is a tough game. Villa are going to hell on the road, and they play City, so Manchester City at home. So like you say, they're not out of it at this stage, but you've gone a poor run, and Liverpool put a run together, and it becomes 11, 12 points, and you really are out of it at that stage because you're not getting back into the race at that stage. And yeah, I think it's a little bit of reality check. Chelsea's last couple, I thought they were probably a touch unfortunate at Everton. I thought they might have got a point at Wolves. A similar story, really. They obviously fought back, and it was a late goal from Wolves to pick up all 3 points. But, like you say, a little bit of a reality check. West Ham, on the other hand, I think obviously they missed Antonio, that's clear. But I think Sebastian Haller getting a goal the other night against Palace, a really good goal at that as well, would have done his confidence, no harm at all. But like I say, they have to be very pleased with their start to the season, West Ham. Let's say sitting 8th at the moment, and a few people fancy them to maybe struggle again this season, but they've obviously, Moyes has turned them into a really good side again. And people forget what Moyes did at Preston and Everton. He obviously is a good manager. Since then, there was a little bit of the joke spell at Sociedad, and United obviously didn't go fantastically, and the other places he's been not been great, but good side West Ham now, and London derby. Obviously, the fact there's not going to be any fans is disappointing, because it's one of those games that a London derby, a night game, you always fancy it'd be a good atmosphere, but that's not to be. But I still hope it will be a good game. I actually almost went Chelsea 3-1, but then realised Chelsea recently, I think Kai Havertz's form's a little bit concerning. I know he's got a lot of criticism recently. He's obviously a talented player, but his lack of urgency and physicality, I think, is a little bit of a problem, and has been highlighted by the Chelsea fans on social media. You look at you speak to Chelsea fans, and they're a little bit concerned by his form. So will he start in this game? That'll be interesting. And Timo Werner as well has gone a little bit quiet this season as well. So interesting game. But yeah, same as you, 2-1 Chelsea.
Yeah, I think those two have been very hit and miss. There's obviously a lot of hype about them, and they've obviously got lots of quality. But certainly Werner went a bit of a drought at the start, and then scored a few, and then a drought since then. So yeah, bit of concern over them, but both going for 2-1 Chelsea wins nonetheless in that one. All right, thank you as ever, Matt. We will be back on Wednesday the 23rd, just before Christmas, for the Boxing Day games and beyond that, for our next round of predictions. So be sure to join us for then. Until then, you can find previews of all these games on sportsmile.co.uk. Find previews for championship games, all of Europeans' top leagues as well. So be sure to check sportsmile.co.uk for that. We hope to see you again soon. You can subscribe to this podcast on all the usual channels and on YouTube to make sure you don't miss the next episode, which again will be on Wednesday 23rd. We hope to see you then, and see you again soon.